Happy Friday, Wargamers! Today I'm going to be showing you how to make some basic urban ruins. One of the best ways to get a lot of terrain onto your table as quickly as possible is by using ruins. They're really easy to make and you can build up large tables worth of terrain really quickly. So today I'm going to show you some basic techniques on how to make your ruins. So let's head over to the bench and get started. So the first thing that you want to do is cut out your templates. There'll be a link in the description below to a free PDF, and included in that is going to be some really basic ruins, some more modern ruins, and then these gothic ruins, and it's these gothic ones that we're going to be working with today. So cut out the shapes and cut out all the windows and doors, and then next you're going to get some 10mm blue foam and we're going to trace out the shapes from the template onto the foam. So all we need to do is just pop the template on. I'm just going to use a small dressmaking pin just to hold it in place, like so. These little pins are really handy when you're making blue foam structures, because you can just lightly pin your templates in place, and you can see that one of my edges isn't quite straight, so I'm just going to move the template off the edge a little bit just so you can get nice clean cuts. And then I'm just going to come in with a permanent marker, and you can use a permanent marker or a felt tip for this. Try and avoid using ballpoint pens because they indent the foam and you don't want to leave any impressions at this stage. And just come in and mark it all around. For these broken sections you don't have to be perfect because they're meant to be broken, so if they're not quite straight it's okay. And just come in like that, going along the edge like so, and then marking out the window like this. And then once you've done that, pop your pins out. I keep mine in a scrap piece of EVA foam, which is a kind of floor mat that you find in garages, and it's just really good for poking your pins into. You can glue together a couple of pieces of blue foam and use that though. And once we've done that, we're going to start making our cuts. So just like we went over in the basics video, which there'll be a link to up here, we're going to take a very sharp knife, line up our straight edge, make several scoring passes, and then make sure we've got a 90-degree blade at a nice shallow angle and just come through. And that's first cut. And then do exactly the same on this edge. Line it up. Make a couple of those shallow passes just so the knife has got somewhere to go. And then nice and shallow all the way through. I'm just going to peel away these excess pieces here so they're not in my way. And then for the outside perimeter of this, I'm just going to freehand it. So I'm just going to come in with the knife nice and shallow, because I've not made any scoring cuts. I'm going nice and slow and letting the knife do the work. Like that. We'll move this out of the way. You can see we're left with a nice basic ruin shape. Then I'm going to come in and cut out the rest of the windows. So make my scoring passes like so, and then straight through. Same on the other side. Couple of scoring passes and then straight through. and I can tell already I've put a little nick in here at some point in the past. So this section is already pretty weak. So I may just break this off at a later stage. But we'll see how we go. So just a few scoring passes and then press in, drag over, and because I'm working on such a small line I find it easier to go and do each corner individually. So press in, drag across, and that should pop out now. Not quite. If you flip the foam over, you probably can't see it on the camera, but you'll be able to see where you've made your cuts, which makes it really easy to come in and just peel it out. And you can see we've got a little bit of tear in there, but that's not too much of a problem because this is a ruin. And then like that. And you can see here that this is a much rougher cut, but that's not a problem. Just come in with the blade. I'm just going to tidy that up. Like that. And then same on the other side. Just going to come in with the blade. Away that little piece of excess in the top corner there. It's still not perfect, but as these are ruins, it won't be too much of a problem. Now, if you have a hot wire cutting table, the process is much the same. Trace around and follow your lines, but for these interior windows, you're better off cutting a small hole, feeding your wire table through it, and then turning it on to cut the interior hole. Then you'll get really nice clean cuts. So I'm just going to finish up cutting this window and then trace and cut out the rest of the templates, and then we'll come back. And here you can see the sidewall pieces all cut out. You'll notice that I've made some marks along the edge that match up with our lines here. The reason for this is going to be a rough guide for our roof piece. Now the piece I'm using for a roof piece is a scrap piece from another project, just because it's of the right size. Now what you want to do is take your pieces, just dry fit them together, take a couple of pins and just pin them together. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to cut the roof piece to size if we need to. So just pin your piece together like that, like so, and then we're just going to take this scrap piece and just have a look. Now, for the sake of ease, I'm also going to pin this scrap piece, just so that I don't have to hold it while I'm making my marks. So I'm just lining it up with those lines that I've drawn from the template, and I'm just running a couple of pins in. Now this is a roof from another ruin, and you can see it doesn't quite fit. So what we're going to do, we'll take our marker and we're just going to mark a couple of places to take off, and on this side we're just going to come in, just take a little more off like that, and then take that corner off as well, just so everything lines up nicely. So take our pins out, put them back into our little foam stand, like that, and then we'll start with this wall and just nice sharp blade, shallow angle, just cut that excess piece off, and same on the roof piece there, just jagged cuts, as long as it meets the line where it's going to be touching the building, I'm not too worried. And same on that side. And then, like we did before, pin it back together. Try and use the same pinholes so that you don't add any extra damage to the piece. It will mean you end up with slightly wider pinholes, but then you only have one of them to worry about in each location. So, now back in, just going to take this off camera so I can line it up properly. It's being a little difficult to line up. So, line it up, pop in a pin. Line it up again, pop in the other pin. You can see the fit is better, but even though it's a better fit, now this part here looks quite unnatural because this part of the building is so broken and this part sticks out. I think what we're going to do is we're just going to take off a bit like that. And then that should be perfect. So the next step is to start adding some weathering. And to do this, I'll use this ceiling piece as an example. You can see I've already done some here because this piece was a test piece. Just add some shadow just so you can see that properly, the texture that we're going for. Now the way we're going to do this is just come in and add random shallow slices all the way along, like this, and then change the angle slightly and do it again, change the angle again and do it again, like that. Now this next piece is going to be very messy, so do this somewhere where it's easy to clean up, but just come in with the edge of your knife or your finger or a wire brush and scrape the edge. You can see what it does is where you've put all those interconnected lines, it just pulls out the foam and gives this really nice distressed broken look. That's ended a little bit flat, so I'm just going to add some extra ones. Like that. There we go. Just like that. And then do that on both sides. It's not necessarily the most realistic looking effect, but when you're doing a lot of ruins for your whole table, doing this is a really great way to get them on the table nice and quickly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come along all of the broken edges of our wall pieces and do that exact same technique, and I'll come back once it's done. So with the rough and broken texture added to the broken edges of our ruins, the next step is going to be to add some additional battle damage. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some bullet holes, and for this I'm just going to use my small drill. You can use a cocktail stick for this or a pin, really doesn't matter, and I'm going to show you on this piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press the drill in and then rotate it like this. And you'll see there that it's left a widened hole. I'm just going to come in from a few random edges and chip out the material. And what we're left with is a nice rough hole. And do this in several parts of the piece of varying sizes, and you can end up with some really nice effects. I'm going to do the same thing now with a cocktail stick and use the sharper side. Just going to press into the foam and then rotate it slightly to make a clean gouge, and then come in from the edges and just chip away a few pieces, just to look like bullet holes. And if you want to do this smaller, just press your stick in and don't rotate it as much, and then just be a little more deliberate with the material to take away. As you can see, you're left with a much smaller hole. What you want to avoid doing is what I've done here and put 3 holes in a line. So now what I'm going to do to get over that, I'm just going to take my knife on one of these holes, I'm just going to spin it round and make a deep gouge, and then just come in on the sides with my cocktail stick, like so, just dragging it to rip the foam, like so, go all the way around, making lines like this, and then to just get rid of that material in the centre, I'm just going to take a wire brush and brush out the centre material and get any stragglers with my cocktail stick, and then just brush it out. What I've done there is create a really large impact that would look as if, let's try and get some shadow on it, as if a tank shell or something similar is hit. And this is a good example to show you some cracking as well. So being such a large piece of damage so close to the edge of the ruin, there's a good chance it would crack. So we're just going to score in some gentle lines, trying to zigzag them and not do any curves like that. And then we're just going to come in with a pencil and just widen those lines like that. And then as you can see, it looks like the force of this impact has cracked the stone. So I'm going to add damage, more cracks and bullet holes all over the piece, and then we'll come back for gluing. With our battle damage added, the next thing we're going to do is just add a little bit of texture to the outside of the ruins. And to do this, as discussed in our basics of working with blue foam video, I'm going to take a wire brush and I'm just going to run it in circles lightly all over the surface of the piece. So it's all over. Like that. Flip it around and do the same on the other side. I'm only going to do one pass on these pieces. What it's going to do is it's going to slightly break the texture of the foam, and it'll give us a really interesting texture for when we apply paint. So I'm going to do that to the entire piece, then we'll come back and glue it together. With the texture added, it's time to move on to gluing. And to glue our piece up, I'm going to be using the Everbuild wood adhesive that I discussed in our basics video. But just use whatever brand of PVA or white glue you prefer. Try and use something that's industrial strength rather than a craft glue, because they have a hard time holding the pieces together. Now all we're going to do is going to decide which pieces are going to connect to which. So double check there. I'll add a little more damage to that corner. There we are. So we're going to glue it up like that. So now what I'm going to do is going to take this piece, I'm going to run a bead of PVA all the way along. Doesn't want to come out very quickly. And there we go. Move that out of the way. And then what I want to do is I want to line up my piece like so, and then I'm going to place it down on the work surface to get it nice and square, applying some pressure to it. I'm going to use the ceiling piece just to square it up, and then I'm going to take a few of our pins and pop them in like so, and another one at the top. I'm going to angle this one just so it doesn't stick out of the damaged parts, and then pop one more around the centre there, and then we'll just leave these pins in until the glue is dry. But at the same time, I'm also going to add the ceiling. So again, take the ceiling piece, move that out of the way for you, run a bead of glue all the way along, like that, glue down, and then we're going to come in and pop a piece on, applying pressure to make sure the glue spreads evenly, and then I'm going to pin this as well. Try to use 2 pins on each side and hope that I get the pin in the right place. What I'm doing here is I'm just looking over the top so I can make sure I get the pin in line with the ceiling, like that. And then I'm just going to stand the piece up to do these ones. Just one in like that, and one in like that. There we are. Now we're going to wait for this to dry. You can see here that we've got a bit of a seam. That's not a problem. Just see here how we've put a tear in the foam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out and just change my angle ever so slightly. And then put lots of pressure on. Try and keep my finger out the way so I don't stab myself. And again at the bottom, lots of pressure, and push the pin in like that. Same for the ceiling piece. I'm turning it around just to make sure it's not sticking through. And you can see as well here that I'm stopping once the bottom of the curved part touches the foam. If I push any more, it'll leave little circular indentations in the foam. So here the pin has gone through, but that's not a problem because it's on one of the ruined sections. So there we are. And then what we'll do is we'll leave this to dry, and then we'll come back and have a completed ruin. One thing you may want to do is there is a seam that runs along here. Try to get this in frame for you. There we are. There's a seam that runs along here. So what I'm just going to do is take a bit of my PVA glue and just run a dab along that seam, just a very small amount. And I'm going to come in with my finger and I'm just going to press down so we get a bit of glue going into that seam to act as a filler. And then I'll come in with a piece of tissue and just wipe away the excess like that, and that'll help fill in that gap a little bit. But what we'll do now is I'll wait for this to dry, and then you can add it to your basing material. I'm going to cover basing in the advanced ruins tutorial because we're going to be doing some more work to this in next week's video to take it from a really basic ruin up to something that looks really, really good. So we're going to leave it there and make sure to come back for next week's video. And there you have it, some really easy techniques to build some basic urban ruins. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below because it really helps us out. And make sure to leave a comment below letting us know whether this is something that you're going to try. Next week we're going to be going over advanced techniques of taking these basic ruins that we've already made and really elevating the detail. So make sure to stick around for that. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to keep watching, you can see last week's video right here. And until next time, happy wargaming.